Hey, it's Dave Bauer.
And this is Brian Mertens, and you're listening to ReWilding Conversations.
Hello, Dave Bauer.
Hi, Brian. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Life is good and satisfying, and I got home from my excursion with my wife in Atlanta. Someday I'll tell you an offline, interesting Uber story that was quite colorful, but we'll save that for another time.
Okay.
And life is. I'm pretty excited about this week. There's some interesting things that I'll be engaging in, and one of the most interesting things I'm doing is a lovely live phone call with you at 7 o'clock and some folks on. You might want to mention that at some point, but I'm looking forward to that phone call. Life is treating me well. We've got a little bit of snow left over from our last snowfall here in Buffalo, and we're hoping to get some milder temperatures soon. But for now, it's looking like what people would probably say is classic Buffalo, New York. A little bit of snow on the ground in March.
Yeah. We have pretty much no snow here,
okay.
Which is a little bit, it's not unusual for March in Nova Scotia to not have snow, but it's also, it's very common for us to have a lot more snow at this time than we do right now.
Yeah.
It's really windy right now, but other than that, the things seem to be gearing up for springtime, which is always exciting. I think another thing that you have going on is you're giving a talk this week, and that might play into our conversation today. Is that right?
Yes. Tomorrow I have the pleasure of being the presenter at SUNY Fredonia, which is one of our state universities here in New York State, and I'll be addressing an audience on children as vital transformation catalysts in our world today. And I'm ready to do this. It's kind of an interesting process when you prepare to speak publicly. You get that invite and you get excited about it, and you put it down for a while, and then the date approaches, and you start getting into your notes and your presentations and stuff. And at this point, I said to my wife when we were walking this morning outside that I'm ready. I'm ready to deliver this. I'm really excited. It's good to go. It's nice to be in that space when you're having the pleasure and honor of speaking to people about something you're really passionate about. And this is probably one of the most passionate areas that I have in my life, this piece about children and acting as catalysts for change in our world today.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it too. Like, I think even I sort of look at my own journey into nature and some of the things that really are, have been the driving force in my process, wanting to learn bird language, wanting to learn about how to build community around nature, and really just, getting people connected on a very, very deep level. Even though I'm not a parent, it's like this really weird thing. Like when I was in my late teen years and just sort of finding out about all this stuff, it was really clear to me that I did not want to raise a family or start a family if I didn't first work on my own connection in nature. I was like, I really need to, if I'm going to bring children into this world or do anything like that, I need to be able to give them this connection with nature because it's just so important. And so I think about that. I think that's a big driver for a lot of people, who are wanting to explore the skills and the kind of stuff that we talk about on ReWilding Conversations. It comes from this intention to create a better world and to pass this stuff on to the next generation and to have it live on and actually even, get stronger connections to nature as the generations go on. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think underneath the human species, and I think this surfaces for those who study animal species with some depth, there's a biological thing woven into our DNA where we have certain attributes about the next generation. So when you parent, whether you parent children, or whether and you're human, or whether you parent offspring and you're some other species, we've seen evidence that there's a very strong bond, maternal, paternal bond. In some cases, it flourishes in the matriarchal side, the female. In some cases, it flourishes quite evidently in the patriarchal or male side. And in the human species, we seem to see evidence that it manifests both ways, but certainly predominantly in the feminine female domain. So this desire to be attentive to the children we bring into this world is really strong, and it's woven into our DNA. Having this opportunity to talk about this somewhat in our podcast today, and then warming up to the presentation tomorrow, this is rich stuff. Our world is a bit, and I'm not going to get dark here, but as a climate scientist, as a nature author, as an environmental scientist, I'm really confident and certain that we're living at a time where our capacity to affect our Earth and its ecosystem's integrity has been significantly compromised, unlike times where native people lived much more within the balance and the ebb and flow of nature and energy flow within their ecosystems. We lost our understanding of that. And I happen to be one of those people on the planet that says, rather than invest in a lot of energy and time with those that are already made their decisions about how they want to live and need to live, my work now is to reach down to that youngest demographic, the young children, 3 to 8 maybe, and help people that work with them and help the children themselves, when I had the pleasure and honor of working with them directly, of remembering what is it like to live in flow with nature and the wisdom and integrity of it. And I think we can get it. There's lots of evidence in the world showing we're beginning to wake up again. And your life, Brian, is evidence that you have woken up as quite a young person, and you're mobilizing remarkable change in the world. So this is one of the reasons why I find it such a privilege to be in relationship with you. You're doing really rich, very valuable work for humans on our planet. So this is urgent. This is not something that we want to mess around with for another generation or two, because we already see evidence in climate that we put so much stuff up in our atmosphere that for many, many, many years to come, the climate that we experience has already been preset in many, many ways. There's little we're going to do to tweak it at this point. That doesn't mean we shouldn't make an effort to change, but there's a lot of we've hit a tipping point with climate. This is one reason why my wife and I really decided, hey, if you're going to do that trip to Alaska, get it in soon. People who have gone to Alaska are telling us, get that trip in soon. The ecosystem up there is changing so rapidly, it's unbelievable. So we're doing it. We're doing it in early June. So let me pause for a bit and bring it back to you, and just say I'm really grateful to be working alongside you in the work we're trying to do with the people that we're in relationship with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the actual name of our podcast, ReWilding Conversations. And we haven't really talked at all about how we arrived at that name. But for me, it's like there's something about just taking a topic, taking something that's important, and making it the focal point of a conversation that, if you want to get ideas and you want to sort of change an understanding and generate insights about something, setting up a regular time to just sort of put our heads together and focus on it for, 45 minutes to an hour, that can be just like a way to get the juices flowing and get some ideas going. And so that's kind of, I think just being involved in these conversations is a really good start. And but I guess the thing that I was curious about, just to, kind of get us started here today, because I think you had some ideas about where we might go with the topic today, and sort of looking at the material of your presentation. And I was just curious about what would you be most excited to explore today with our listeners? And
all right.
Yeah, I'd just love to get some ideas.
You may need to say, yeah, Dave, I'd like to share something. So please use that as a segue to come in, because once I get turned on, I might need my mic muted. So let me be a little playful here and just say, we're going to talk about children. We're going to talk about how they are genetically our gift. Children are our gift through something that I'll touch on very shortly. And I'd like to then go to two primary domains. If we're going to nurture children really wisely, we're going to touch on two really exciting ways to nurture children's ability to transform really needed change. I'll pause there intentionally only to say, so what's this piece about transformation and catalyst? Let's talk about the words we're using. So we've gotten ourselves in a bit of a quagmire as a species. So we need a transformation. We need a dramatic change in form or appearance in terms of how we're going about managing this planet. The word catalyst is really appropriate here, and it's a blend of a scientific, sociological use of the term catalyst. In chemistry, a catalyst is an agent in a reaction that's used in remarkably tiny amounts, but that really enhances the speed of a chemical reaction. In organisms, they're called enzymes. So we have a really rich soup of enzymes in us, as do many species of plants and animals, that make the chemical reactions that we need to happen in really fast ways happen without heat. Because if you used heat to speed up the reaction, we would perish. So nature has evolved this really cool thing called enzymes or catalysts. And that is an agent that provokes high speed in the need for that dramatic change that you're seeking. So where do the children fit in? Well, our colleagues Jane Goodall have shared with us that children can change the world. And then another name that many of us will recognize, Nelson Mandela, has shared with us, there's no keener revelation of society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. So to the degree we can look within our families, look within our villages, look within our country, look at the world, and see how are we managing children. That's going to give you a really, really clear sense of how you're doing. So I'm going to make a sociological leap. Let's take a look at the refugee situation on our planet, and how are we in this country, in my country, United States, welcoming children that are really disenfranchised and needing support. Regrettably, I'm living in a country at this time that isn't doing that particularly well. Okay, I'm not going to go into the political piece. I'm simply going to say I'm confident that we are not managing children in a way that Mandela and Jane Goodall would wish we would. Okay, so I'm going to now transition briefly so let's talk about the change piece. So anyone that knows a little bit about reproduction knows it takes, at least in sexual reproduction, you've got two alleles, two pieces of genetic information that come together, and through random combinations and mutations, you get change within a species. So you look at a family, my family. I've got 5 grandchildren, a 6th one on the way. Each one of them have snippets of DNA that are from me, from my wife. They've got the exact same gene code as some of the genetic code in me and my wife, because we're grandparents. And yet, the unique combinations of those sperm cells and those egg cells have created really unique children. And this happens every time a family has another child. You get this unique combination of genes. The other piece that's at work here is the learned behavior. So each of those children that are raised in a family, even when they're raised in the same unique family, because of the nature of the situation that the family changes, the learned behaviors change. And if things go well, the child is raised in a nurturing, loving family. Same thing is true of organisms. When we look at animal species where the habitat isn't so disrupted and the organisms can raise their offspring in the ways that they're coded to raise offspring, and when that tactile stimulation, touch, and time with the parent is able to occur, that the species will thrive. If the habitat is fractured or diminished, or there's intrusion, or the environment's contaminated, then the nurturing behavior is no longer able to be in place. So the species is at risk, not from the genetic piece, but from the need for the learned behavior from the parent. So we got these really cool threads that are built into the way organisms and children come into the world. And then there's this other piece that's going on in the learned component, and then I'm going to pause and take a break after I define this mechanism. So there's a field in science called neuroscience, okay? And we now live at a time which is really exciting. Due to the imaging that we can do into a human brain, we can literally see what part of the human brain is lighting up and what does it take to learn information. So a subset of neuroscience is neuroplasticity, meaning you can change neural pathways over time, meaning you can do new stuff. You can learn to do new stuff. Learn the sound of a new bird call. Learn how to be comfortable in nature through the clothing that you choose to wear. You can learn new things that you seek to learn. You can learn to be more compassionate. You can also unlearn bad stuff. You can begin to recognize this is not good for me. I shouldn't smoke. I should let go of my prejudices. I should get rid of some more of this ambient anxiety. I gotta learn to unlearn some bad stuff. And the field of neuroplasticity is really exciting because it says with a lot of practice, you can do that. That's exactly how you learn new stuff. So Brian, I'm going to come back to you and invite you to share a time when you remember what was something that you wanted to learn that you knew you didn't yet know. And then can you give some short evidence of what did it take for you to go from I'm not good at this or I got to let go of this poor practice and I want to become something different. I want to acquire a new trait. Can you give us an example from your life of one of these episodes where you gained some new behaviors and how did that come about?
Oh, interesting. Okay. The thing that immediately comes to me is thinking about when I wanted to learn mentoring. And I wanted to, basically I got really inspired by the whole process of, conversations with someone who has had an experience in nature. And through the art of questioning, by asking questions, you can actually help that person come to a deeper level of awareness. And so I wanted to do this. I wanted to know how to ask the right questions and how to basically guide people through a process where they have an insight experience that leads to expanding awareness. And it's kind of like, almost like on an invisible level where they don't actually realize they're necessarily learning, kind of like the Socratic method, rather than just didactically teaching people about birds and plants and trees and tracks, to actually help them come to their own conclusions by asking artful questions. And so I would practice this with like people that I know. Like I would wait for like an opportunity where someone was saying, "Oh, I saw this bird, out in the yard the other day, and I don't know what it was." And then I would just start asking questions, and it's not like I really had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had a sense of what was possible through this storytelling and questioning process. But I didn't really know what questions to ask. I didn't really know how to approach the whole thing. And so I just sort of started asking lots of questions. And sometimes people would be like, kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? Or they wouldn't get it. And, it would just sort of be like a really weird interaction. But after a while of doing it, I started to notice certain patterns. Times when I would ask a question, I'd be, well, like, was it closer to the size of a crow or was it small like a chickadee? Kind of sorting questions to help them sort their observations into a category. And it's like I learned this pattern around, okay, that's like a type of question that I can start to ask. And so there were those sorts of things where I started to notice patterns around when I was asking questions that actually worked and actually did end up taking someone deeper into their story. And then also the other side would be, opportunities to actually witness other people asking questions and, where they did it in a way where I was like, wow, that worked really well, and being able to kind of model their process there. And so just, doing it over and over and over again, I eventually got pretty good at it. And, it's a really core practice actually now that I use with people a lot, because it's probably one of the best ways to actually teach, bird language and tracking and all the kinds of skills that I work with. So, there's definite progression from starting with having no idea how to do this to working on the skill and struggling through it, and then gradually getting little insights, getting little patterns, and finally getting to a point where I don't really have to think about it anymore. It's just sort of natural. I already know how to do it, so it just comes out.
So you gave a really premier example of neuroplasticity, meaning you get clear about what you want, you start doing it, it's messy, you hit it sometimes it's random when you hit it, you don't know that you're on your path, but the environment gives you signals that I hit it, that was a hit, that was a win, and then you replicate that. And so what we know in the world now, and great masters throughout all history have known this forever, you've got to practice, you've got to redo, and you don't do the exact same thing. You need something called novel practice. What you described, as you tweaked it, you listened, you realized, you made some realizations, you tweaked your technique of questioning, and now you feel rather confident that you've developed enough rich neural pathways where you're operating as quite a proficient nature mentor in certain capacities that you would call nature mentor work. Okay, so this is where I'm at with this talk tomorrow and with this podcast. So let's go into the good stuff for a minute. If you want to explore good stuff, particularly with kids, okay, you've got to be asking yourself things like, how much time am I spending with the children I'm thinking of? Am I in relationship with this child with some frequency? Now, it needs to have another attribute. It's got to be quality time. My wife told me when I was a young father, Dave, you're not going to get quality time with our children unless you have quantity time built in. Meaning, you've got to hit it a lot, and some of it will be quality. And lots of times you will not be able to determine when those quality moments will occur. The way you get them is by doing it a lot. Anyone seeking something that they desire in their life that would be behavioral needs to be humble and say, I've got to do it a lot, and I've got to recognize I will gain efficacy in it, and I only get that through much, much practice. And we're talking often about hundreds of hours of practice. So you want it to be playful. You want your costs to be low and your benefits to be high. You don't want your costs to be high. You don't want to get in an automobile with a 16-year-old and take them into highly congested traffic and hope things are going to go well. That's not what you want to do. You want to build in a lot of quantity for that child to learn to drive, but you want to do it incrementally, and you want to have a lot of wisdom in terms of how you introduce more and more and more episodes of practicing driving. So I will ask people tomorrow, and I ask anyone on the podcast today, how much quality time are you spending with a child, for example, in the last 3 days? Reflect for a moment. Did you have contact with any children? And can any of it be called quality time? Or broaden it to a week. And then, did you have any contact with a child that would be quality time with a child? By the way, quality time can happen in 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be hour-long or half-day. Quality can emerge within a moment. And then in the last month, how much quality time have you had? If you're finding you're able to reply, I want to become a nature mentor, how much quality time have I spent in the last 3 days, in the last week, in the last month, where I can honestly say I've hit this many episodes of quality. So one can ask themselves, what do we mean by quality? Well, if you have some understanding of what you're doing, you have the internal compass to know when it's quality. And if we go to children, I know when I hit it with my grandchildren, with my own children when I was a father, and I still have 3 living children today I'm very blessed to have. I know when it's quality. It's quality, and it can be quality over 5 seconds. It can be quality over a week-long shared vacation. It can be quality in a portion of a phone call. And there's focus. There's the attention of the 2 people involved, the child and the adult. And there's a sense of satisfaction and connection that there was some shared event, peace, feeling that occurred there. Okay? Those are some of the attributes of quality time. And I'll ask the audience participants to share with me during the presentation what would they define as quality time. I'm going to then lead them, and I'm convinced that we find that one of the areas of remarkably high quality time that we can have with each other as adults or children is shared time in nature. And shared doesn't mean it has to be with another human being. You can be alone and have time in nature. So now it's shared time in nature between you and the ecosystem that you're in. It's shared. You're sharing it with nature. So you don't have to be with others. You can often be alone. And in fact, moments alone in nature, whether it be sitting on your porch for 5 minutes in a micro episode of Sit Spot, or in a woods, or looking at a photograph, for that matter, of beautiful nature imagery, we find that when people do that, immune systems increase, heart rates go down, blood pressure goes down, cognitive clarity emerges. So this is what I'll be sharing creativity and problem solving is enhanced, and there's evidence of this through research that we have. The physical activity and the kinesthetic intelligence of the adult and or the child increases when you're sharing time in nature. Cognitive abilities become richer. You might wonder, how is that possible? So think about it. I'm in a classroom, a human classroom, and there's a lesson underway, and the boss, the teacher, is putting stuff in front of my sensual field that I'm supposed to be picking up. Odds are I'm picking up a little bit, but odds are I'm missing a lot of it because I'm daydreaming or I'm looking out the window or the kid next to me is bugging me. So, we're not at a maximum learning curve. Take that same child out in nature, help them awaken their senses through a little bit of guided questioning, and you're going to see neural pathways that are lighting up in remarkably big ways compared to the relatively sterile man-made environment. And we're beginning to know this. Scandinavian and German educators have known this for many years now. We now have about 250 forest schools in the United States. I suspect that in Canada, knowing what I know of the Canadian folks, I think they probably have more nature or forest schools in Canada than in the United States. But it's an emerging phenomenon. And that basically the short version is the child spends a generous amount of time in nature on the grounds where the child is attending the preschool or the daycare institution. They're in nature. And those children are getting remarkably interesting cognitive information when they're in that natural setting versus the limited splash of cognitive information in a man-made or woman-made, human-made classroom. I'm not denigrating classrooms here. Please don't get me wrong. I taught for 34 years and I loved what I did, and I made every effort of making it a vibrant, stimulating environment. And I will admit that when I took the kids out on my nature trail outside the school, I didn't need to compete with that internal space. I didn't need to compete with the limitations of my classroom. I had moved my classroom outdoors, and really cool things were happening that I didn't have to worry about. They were good. They were rich. I'm going to pause now just in one more moment. I just want to go through one or two other benefits of connecting a child with nature. Social relationships are enhanced. Why? Because children are having a chance to innately find situations where they're interacting with each other in ways where the teacher has told them inside to be quiet and not to socialize in some cases. When you're in nature, there's much more desire and there's much more freedom to be socially interactive with the thing you're with. And you're not just socially developing social relationships with the people, you're developing social capacity with the organisms around you, which doesn't happen very often in a man-made classroom. Another quality we find is self-discipline is better and more evident and more able to be managed by children when they spend time in nature. And the last one I'll mention in this list is the mental and emotional health of a child who's spending significant regular time in nature is reinforced when they spend time in nature and outside setting. So having thrown that list out, I'll pause now for a little bit, and Brian, bring something in that you're curious about or that you've thought about as I had my own little thing there.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a very how-to actionable sort of person. So kind of my mind was going to the place of all right, looking at what you're saying and thinking about what is the overarching message here. And, kind of what I'm getting is that you're really encouraging people to go outside and have lots of quality experiences in nature, and that, you know, if there was one thing to take away from what you're saying, it's go outside and have lots of quality experiences in nature. You know, tune in and you know, experience what's happening out there. Would that be kind of accurate? Is there more to it?
Oh yeah. Now we can get into qualities. We can get into attributes that make that quality time more likely to happen. We can do that, and for example, I'll only give one example. I can spend quality time outside walking in a highly congested city. Yes. And one might say, I'm outside, I'm getting air, I'm getting natural light, and if it's raining, I'm feeling rain. I need an umbrella or I'm going to get wet, so maybe I could define that as a natural setting. Take that same 15-minute immersion where you're walking from A to B in a congested city, and take that 15-minute walk in a setting that is more natural and less evident that man has affected it, and you will be in a much higher immersion of 15 minutes of quality time in nature in the second. This, again, is not to denigrate, I've got to live in the city, I've got to walk from A to B. Is that better than taking a taxi? Absolutely. It's better than taking an Uber or a taxi to do that 15-minute walk and smell and you know, be aware of your sounds in that congested urban setting. And when you can, uplift the quality significantly. Get to a city park. Get to a city park and stare up into the canopy of the tree that you're near and just be with it. Now you've enhanced quality. And you can do this with intentionality. You don't have to feel like I'm a victim of my environment. You can enhance quality when you become aware of what makes quality, what are its core components. So what we talk about is creativity. So creative nature play, when you get in, you're really uplifting play or nature time when you're in the outdoor setting, when the child has either safety alone in that natural setting, or there's an adult nearby or with them that it makes that allows it to be safe, and the child's, if the child were to get into a little bit of physical trouble, they could be taken care of. Regrettably, we have way too many parents that think nature's going to harm my kid. My kid's going to break an arm. They're going to get bruised. A spider's going to bite them, or a tick is going to bite them. And so we've magnified a fear in our parents that we have to address. And I'm not going to go into that in this conversation today, but we do have to get to parents of young children and help them lower their fear quotient for being in nature and their misunderstanding of what nature is. Another way to enhance creative nature play is allow the child to initiate the experience. In other words, pay some attention to what is this child noticing, smelling, tasting, looking at, hearing. Be curious with them. Ask them those kinds of questions rather than say, we're going to go to the playground and swing. Hey, come on, stay on the sidewalk. Hey, be careful. Don't swing too high. You know, instead of managing the play. You get much higher quality play when it's creative nature play, where you're paying attention to the child and you're allowing the child to lead, okay? And you're in natural settings whenever possible, ponds, creeks, backyards. Those are some attributes of creative nature play. So I would invite our listeners, look for time to play in nature for you as the adult. Look for times to play in nature with a child. and allow it to be a bit unstructured. Allow it to be a bit creative and spontaneous, and be as curious as you possibly can. Because when you get curious, and when that child senses that you are curious, that takes it to a remarkably rich level when you do that. Introducing that conscious effort at just being curious. So, again, a short pause. Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, I just want to encourage, everyone who's listening, just throw out a few questions to reflect on and look at in your own experience. And the first one is, are you actually doing this? Are you actually going outside? Maybe you have a sit spot, or maybe you like to go tracking. Maybe there's a favorite natural space like a forest where you like to go for a walk. Are you actually getting out there and using your senses to observe nature? And if you are, then how can you increase the quality of the time that you spend out there, either by slowing down just a little bit more, or using your senses a little bit more consciously, or activating your curiosity and bringing some questions with you, like, what's catching my attention today, or what are the birds doing today, what can I discover today in nature? Just looking for that one way to take it a little bit deeper than what you normally do. Or if your answer to the first question, are you actually doing this, is no, I'm not. I haven't been going outside. I don't have a sit spot. I don't have, a place to go walking. I want to encourage you to do it and, just try it out and, and focus really on, I like the way that you put it, Dave, is, just focusing on quantity. Don't even worry about the quality at first. Just sort of start getting in the habit of getting out there and actually engaging, and then you'll find that the quality will increase as you do that. So just do a sit spot in your backyard. Go for a wander in the forest, and then the sort of, that's like the personal side of it. And then, the whole other layer that we've kind of been talking about a little bit in this conversation is, are you doing this, and are you supporting the children in your life? And, think about the kids that you have in your life. Maybe you're a parent or a teacher, or, you work with kids in some form. Are you finding ways to get them engaged with nature, helping them open up their senses, use their senses consciously in nature, get curious about nature by asking them questions about the birds and the plants and the things that they get excited about outside. And, if you are doing that with the kids in your life, how can you help them go deeper? How can you increase the quality by bringing in, sensory awareness, bringing in more curiosity, bringing in better observation? And if you're not doing it, how can you just get started? How can you just get them out there in some form? It doesn't have to be the most amazing thing in the world, but just start focusing on getting the ball rolling, and just get something started. And that's the catalyst, right, Dave?
Yes. And as I hear you talk, I need to remember when I'm talking tomorrow, and I'm remembering right now for this podcast, if it's the child relationship that you're seeking to enhance, there is no way you're authentically going to enhance that relationship with that child unless you yourself have done it. You leave the child or go for quite a while if you need to, and you do it first. You have to experience it yourself without the responsibility of feeling like, where's the kid? Is the kid okay? Is the kid fussy or crying or hungry? Lighten the load, lighten the cost, as I said. Make it low cost and get out there yourself first. Do it yourself first. Get experimental, get curious, find out what you love, and then invite the child along with you. And don't take them and do something with them that you don't first love yourself, because they will pick up, whether you say it or not, they will pick up vibes from you through your eyes, your voice, your body position, that you're comfortable here, you're safe here, you're excited here. So you have to own it. You have to find your own way first as the adult, and then you bring the child into it. It would be quite mistaken if I recommended you get out there with a child and not have some comfort yourself. That could go badly. So afford yourself missing that, and don't sabotage your love for this child and this child's love for you by doing it prematurely. Get out yourself in whatever form you do. If you love biking, then bike, and then say, which of my bike rides can I invite a child along? If you like cross-country skiing, if you like journaling, if you like poetry, if you like using binoculars and checking out birds, do it, and then bring a child along your path of nature immersion that you love, and your love will be evident to that child, and make it an immersion that child too can do. So that's a slightly different version than pure creative nature play. In a pure version of creative nature play, you're paying more attention to the child, you're letting the child lead. But I really wouldn't want you doing creative nature play if you didn't have some areas of being in nature that you had grown comfortable and loved doing. So that's my reflection there.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Dave. I totally resonate with that, and it's one of the things that I think comes up for a lot of people when they're wanting to share it, either as a teacher in a very formal setting, or if they're just like doing it more casually, with their nieces and nephews. They sort of have this idea of what I'm supposed to be doing with the kids. I'm supposed to take them out and look at birds. Or I'm supposed to take them out and find some tracks or something. And, it's easy to lose sight of your own passion and curiosity when your focus is on the kids. But, the reality is the kids are going to get most excited about the stuff that you're excited about. And so if you just be yourself, be really authentic, and invite them to come along with you. If you love going out and classifying plants and drawing them in a journal, and that's something that genuinely lights you up and makes you really excited, the kids will probably get excited, and it will probably light them up too, just by you sharing it with them. And so I think that's a really good one.
Yeah. So this has been a real gift for me, this podcast, and I want to thank all those that are listening as well, because you've gifted me, through the vehicle of this podcast, with an opportunity to reflect a little bit deeper in my work as nature mentor. And I do have some real confidence now that I've been at this game for a bit. I had released a book about 2 years ago called What's Under That Rock, Papa? And it's a book about discovering nature through the eyes of a child, my 2 grandchildren. So being at this thing of nature play for about 2 years now, I am really growing very confident that there's good stuff going on. And this podcast and the ReWilding Conversations series that we're doing on YouTube and on Facebook is rich and satisfying. So join us in whatever way you're seeking to join us. And really, when you get a chance, gift Brian and I in your own unique way to gift us by joining us in some way, by either commenting or emailing us or reaching out, because that synergy that occurs within human relationships where 2 or more people align in their efforts, it really gets quite rich when we do combine our efforts and we create flow for each other. So thanks for this opportunity, Brian, to work within an area of living that I find really uplifting these days.
Yeah, it's really fun. I know that we even have listeners of the ReWilding Conversations podcast who are currently working on their own presentations. They're working on they're writing books, and there's lots of really cool stuff going on. So I think they're really going to enjoy just hearing some of your process and kind of just sometimes it's helpful just to have a place to share what you're thinking about. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this presentation. I wonder if I could just run some ideas by you and work it all out. Kind of the behind the scenes of how does all this stuff actually come together for someone who's seeking to really bring it to the world in a bigger way. And so I just really appreciate you sharing, and it's I know people are going to really enjoy hearing you. Is it tomorrow that you're doing it?
Yeah, it's in a town called Fredonia, New York. It's where the campus of SUNY Fredonia is, and it's tomorrow around noontime on campus. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That's cool. That's going to be so great.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much says it all for me today. Just
all
really
right.
grateful
well, then,
to.
Yeah. So be well, and we'll talk again very soon.